According to whispers from insiders and reactions recorded in recent sit-downs, Brandi may have lifted the veil on what she perceives to be a troubling pattern in Evelyn's behavior, a pattern of control exclusion and subtle jabs disguised as concern, but this time things have taken a turn no one saw coming. Rumors are circulating, tongues are wagging, and fans are completely stunned by what's allegedly transpired between Brandi Maxiell and Evelyn Lozawada. The question on everyone's mind is whether Evelyn has finally been exposed or if Brandi is just stirring things up as the wildfire charity event approaches and unresolved tension builds. The cast is surrounded by suspicion, side eyes, and silent alliances, so buckle up because what's simmering beneath the surface might just erupt in ways no one's prepared for. Tension had been building for weeks, but no one expected it to erupt the way it did. Backstage rumors about Evelyn Lozada's behavior were becoming louder, and this time it wasn't just the usual gossip. Never one to hold back had reportedly reached her breaking point after a series of behind-the-scenes incidents left her doubting everything she believed she knew about her so-called friend. According to sources close to the group, things began to fall apart after a private conversation between Brandi and a crew member who allegedly saw Evelyn pulling strings during filming. The insider claimed Evelyn had been subtly steering conversations, planting seeds, and controlling narratives while keeping her hands clean. At first, Brandi didn't want to believe it, but as she started to piece it together, the pattern became evident. Every fallout, confrontation, and dramatic sit-down of a Lynn always seemed to come out looking composed while others were left in chaos. At a brunch meeting that was supposed to be relaxed and lighthearted, Brandi let her guard down just enough to express her concerns. She didn't name anyone, but her words were powerful because she felt that someone in the group was constantly manipulating her emotions to keep power and making herself the victim. Jackie Christie, sipping her mimosa, raised an eyebrow, but Jennifer Williams, sitting across from them, kept her expression unreadable, but her silence said volumes. What Brandi didn't realize was that Jackie and Jennifer had already been feeling a shift, and that Evelyn's invitation to the wildfire charity event had come off as cold and transactional, almost as a ploy rather than a sincere gesture. After brunch, the women left in separate cars, each carrying the weight of unspoken truths. Later that night, Brandi replayed all the missed calls, the weird timing of certain confessions, and the way Evelyn would cry just in time for the cameras only to laugh it off moments later when no one was watching. Brandi had always trusted her instincts and had been doubting Evelyn's sincerity since the trip to Palm Springs. Jennifer was still trying to heal from past wounds with Evelyn and had been keeping her distance, so when she finally hinted that Evelyn might be playing a deeper game, the crew subtly rearranged call sheets in an attempt to place the women in scenes where they would be forced to engage. It wasn't manipulation, but strategy. They knew something explosive was on the horizon. Meanwhile, Evelyn appeared unconcerned, at least on the surface, with her social media filled with affirmations, glamorous selfies, and cryptic quotes about loyalty and truth. But sources say she was fully aware of the shifting tides. Evelyn claimed to be a supportive friend, and the production was buzzing behind the scenes. Members' abrupt shifts in attitude during group scenes, and although she pretended to be calm behind closed doors, she was allegedly calling in reinforcements to try to determine exactly what Brandi knew and how much she was willing to say. Tensions reached a peak the night before the charity event, when Brandi had dinner with Jennifer alone, no cameras or producers. But within minutes, the atmosphere turned serious. Brandi talked about the pressure she was feeling from the group, as well as from viewers and social media trolls who were accusing her of being negative or causing drama. Jennifer, who had been the target of public criticism, repeatedly realized and reminded Brandi that truth has a way of coming to the surface. It wasn't just the emotional shifts or the selective friendships. It was the subtle way Evelyn isolated people, built them up, broke them down, connected with them deeply, and then withdrew Brandi. They compared it to a chess game where Evelyn was always 10 steps ahead. However, neither of them knew that Jackie had been having similar thoughts and had been journaling every conversation, vibe shift, and moment that didn't sit right. That night, alone in her room, she reread her notes and discovered something that made her stomach drop every falling out in the group over Evelyn. The charity event was being held at a local community center, affected by the recent fires. And although it was supposed to be a day of giving and unity, underneath it was anything but. The next morning arrived quickly, And although Evelyn wasn't always at the center, she was always close enough to feel the heat without getting burned. Her appearance was calm, but her eyes were sharp, scanning the room as if she were getting ready for battle. Jennifer came next, wearing an all-white outfit, perfect makeup, and her energy was polished but distant. She greeted Brandi with a nod, but no hugs, and they were cautious but in agreement. As usual, Jackie arrived late, but she had her usual swagger and walked in like she owned the place. When she saw that the other two were already waiting, she paused and her hair was laid back, her heels clicked, and her smile was picture perfect. But as soon as she made eye contact with Brandi, something changed. The room didn't go silent, but it felt colder, as if the air itself was watching. Evelyn approached the group and gave everyone polite kisses and practiced charm, but her body language conveyed a different message. She stood slightly angled away, her hands tucked under her arms, and Jennifer smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Said, "Well, look who finally showed up." Evelyn laughed it off, but the tension was unavoidable. Then, as if on cue, one of the producers motioned for them to sit down for a lighthearted group discussion to be filmed close to the donation station. The setup was innocent, but the reality was far from that. Within minutes, the conversation shifted from fire relief to personal flare-ups, and Jackie, sipping iced tea, brought up the importance of supporting one another, especially during difficult times. People pretend to offer support when really, they're just maintaining appearances. She said it without naming names, but everyone knew who she was referring to. Evelyn's expression remained the same, but she moved slightly in her chair. Her smile briefly faltered as she looked down at her lap, and Jackie just stared at Brandi while she waited. Then quietly but firmly, Brandi said, "I just don't do fake, I'm too grown to play those games." The silence that followed was deafening. Not just the cast, crew, assistants, or charity organizers had held their breath. Evelyn leaned forward slightly and responded, "I don't think anyone here is playing games. If there's something that needs to be said, let's say it." Brandi didn't blink. She wasn't here to dance around anything. She looked Evelyn in the eye and said, "You always want to control how things are said when they're said and who gets to say them, but the truth doesn't work like that. Not everyone's going to play by your rules." Everyone around them sensed that something had broken open, something had begun, and it wasn't going to be easy to put back together. Jennifer shifted uneasily, looking around to see if cameras were zooming in on the two women. Jackie sat back, her lips pressed tightly together, watching the two women like a hawk. The tension wasn't loud, but it was sharp, like a wire pulled tight ready to snap. Evelyn didn't flinch, but her eyes hardened. "I've always been honest," she said, and Brandi laughed once. There was a short, dry sound. "You've been honest about what serves you," but the energy was too great to ignore. A producer nearby whispered something into a microphone, clearly signaling the rest of the crew to stay locked in. Fans would devour the conversation, which was unscripted and raw, but for the women involved, it wasn't about screen time. Rather, it was about personal Brandi. She finally reached into her bag and took out her phone, not playing the voice notes or reading the texts, but simply holding it up and saying, "I have all the receipts I need. You can spin things however you want." However, the people who matter were already looking through it, and Jennifer looked over in surprise, not knowing that Brandi had kept proof. Jackie tilted her head and Evelyn's jaw tightened just a little. Just a little. "That's what this is?" Evelyn asked, her tone still even smear campaign. Brandi shook her head. "No. This is me finally refusing to stay silent while you keep manipulating everyone around you. This is me saying enough, and just like that, it was out there." The words had been spoken, not yelled, not screamed, just stated clearly and cleanly. Evelyn sat back, crossing her arms. "If anyone is being manipulative, it's you. You act sincere, but you're calculated, bringing things up in front of cameras, holding on to messages, and waiting for the ideal moment that doesn't exist. That's retaliation. We've all experienced hurt, betrayal, and misunderstandings, but if we're truly here trying to rebuild this, then it's not the way." Brandi turned to her, frustration creeping into her voice. "Rebuild what, Jackie? Something that was never real in the first place." She looked back at Evelyn. "The sisterhood you preach about only exists when people do what you want." Jennifer finally spoke up, her voice firm but soft. "I think we've all had Moments when we weren't the best versions of ourselves, and perhaps this is just one of those situations where we need to take a step back. But that didn't sit well with Brandi. Evelyn said something that nobody saw coming. I invited you to the event because I wanted us to move forward, not to try to look perfect. But I see now that you've already made up your mind. I finally stopped acting like I didn't notice, so I just picked up my bag and walked toward the door. Jennifer took care of her but stayed seated, and Jackie muttered something under her breath that sounded like, "Damn," and Brandi exhaled deeply. She wasn't upset, she wasn't emotional, she felt free. The weight of pretending to keep things in was gone, and inside the community center, the silence that remained said everything that needed to be said. It took a few minutes before anyone spoke again, but Jackie's voice of chaos and reason broke the silence. Well, I guess that went by quickly. Jennifer gave a small nod, and she's not wrong. But you know Evelyn, she knows how to protect her space. Jackie looked at her curiously. And what about you? Are you protecting yours, or are you just waiting to see which way the wind blows? Jennifer didn't respond immediately, instead glancing toward the door Brandi had left through and sighed. I'm just trying to figure out who's real and who's... That's it. Evelyn stayed seated, slowly twisting the ring on her finger. She had survived worse, but something about this felt different, more exposed and more permanent. Later that night, socials, media went viral, with fans analyzing every second of the leaked online slow-motion replays, zoomed-in reactions, and side-by-side comparisons of previous conflicts. Everyone had an opinion. Some accused Brandi of harboring grudges, while others praised her for speaking her truth. Evelyn's supporters fiercely defended her, claiming she was being ambushed, and Jennifer was dubbed the silent judge. Fan pages shared clips with dramatic captions. Influencers shared reaction videos and hashtags like SAR Team Brandi, Evelyn Exposed, and BBWLA Breakdown began trending. It was no longer just reality TV. It was a movement, and throughout it all, Brandi remained silent. No tweets, stories, or interviews, which her fans felt said more than words could ever say. Meanwhile, in late-night phone calls and private group chats, the other cast members started to weigh in. Some felt caught in the middle, while others were prepared to take sides. One source close to production stated that several women had already contacted producers to express their desire to address what they perceived to be a toxic dynamic that had been allowed to develop unchecked for too long. Once the charity event was over, it became evident that the group as a whole was fractured, not just between Brandi and Evelyn, but also the foundation of the group itself. The old rules no longer applied, loyalty lines were blurring, and everyone knew that things would never be the same from now on. As the days went by, the aftermath of the event shook the group like shockwaves, leaving a scar that no one could ignore. Production frantically rearranged schedules in an attempt to record the fallout in real time, and every woman in the circle was abruptly pulled into interviews. Insiders said that Brandi was focused on keeping her peace, but others whispered that she was giving the group space to either come clean or expose themselves without her lifting a finger. It was a power move, and it worked. Within 48 hours, Jennifer and Jackie found themselves drawn into separate conversations with other cast members who suddenly had a lot to say about Evelyn. One of the newer girls, who had mostly stayed on the sidelines until now, reportedly told Jackie that the energy had changed, and everyone felt that whatever fake harmony they had been clinging to had vanished, leaving behind only the raw, uncomfortable truth. Evelyn was not sitting quietly either. She reached out to several of the girls, inviting them to a small get-together at her place. It wasn't an official scene, just a casual night with wine and conversation, or so it seemed. Some felt the invite was her way of regaining control, rebuilding her image, and reminding everyone who really ran the group. Jennifer arrived late, but she came alone with a soft hello and a guarded smile. She had witnessed similar behavior from Evelyn in previous group outings: emotional distancing, silent triangulation, and sudden shade disguised as concern. I think you're a strong woman, Evelyn. And I think you know how to survive any room you walk into. But sometimes that strength can feel like control. And control can feel like manipulation. Especially when people feel like they can't be real with you, without consequences. The night began with light music and stories from the past. But soon the elephant in the room moved to the center of the conversation. Evelyn, sitting on the edge of her white leather couch, looked directly at Jennifer and said, "I just want to know what you really think." Jennifer, who was always poised, took a breath. Later that night, after most of the women had left, Jackie pulled Jennifer aside outside on the patio. The two sat in silence for a few moments before Jackie finally said, "She's unraveling not like wild, but like grip is slipping." Jennifer nodded slowly. Yes, because she built her place here on image, and now that image has cracks. Everyone thinks I'm controlling because Evelyn didn't lash out, even though the wine glasses seemed to pause. Instead, she smiled tightly. They wanted a full cast event, something big, something emotional, something that could bring everyone together without feeling forced. Meanwhile, production was working overtime, and they came up with a weekend retreat that was low-key but picturesque. A villa outside the city with wine country vibes, luxury on the outside, chaos underneath the invite list that included everyone, including Brandi, and to everyone's surprise, she accepted. The weekend began with quiet, polite hellos, side eyes, little clusters of conversation, and Brandi's arrival, sunglasses, headphones, and a look after dinner on the second night, when everyone was gathered around a large fire pit with drinks. In hand and the stars shining overhead, Evelyn turned to Brandi and said, "In front of everyone, I just want to understand where all this is coming from. I've tried to be there for you, and you act like I'm the enemy." Brandi looked at her for a long moment. "You're not the enemy, you're just not the friend you pretend to be." Some women gasped quietly, while others leaned in as Evelyn tried to keep her cool. Cool. "And what does that mean, Brandi? It means you know how to perform empathy, but you don't know how to practice it. It means you check in while the cameras are rolling, but you ghost people when they're actually hurting. It means you don't fight fairly and you just reset the stage." The words hit like thunder, and when Jennifer looked down, Jackie covered her mouth. Another castmate whispered, "Damn," and Evelyn's face went still. "I have been nothing but good to you. I brought you back. Into this group, I gave you space to shine, and this is how you repay me." Brandi leaned forward, her eyes steady. "You brought me back because it made you look good. And when I didn't play nice, you flipped not in front of the camera. Crew, but behind the scenes, the passive shots, the little remarks, the alliances. I've watched you do it to everyone, and I finally decided you weren't going to do it to me." Silence enveloped the group like a blanket, and nobody moved or interrupted. Evelyn stood up, pacing a little. "You sound paranoid, you sound bitter, and you sound like someone who's upset that they're no longer in the center." Brandi also stood up, "But I sound like someone who is sick of acting like leadership equals kindness, that just because you've survived things, you get a free pass to walk over people." Jackie, who was quiet for once, stood up slowly and walked. Between the two of them, enough to say, "This doesn't need to go any further, it's out now, it's all out, no one's perfect. We've all played roles, we've all taken shots, but we're not going to heal by tearing each other down on repeat." Jackie was watching someone who realized they had been hurt by the same pattern, but never had the words. Brandi and Evelyn looked at each other, breathing hard, the flames of the fire pit dancing in their eyes, and then Brandi said, "I'm not here to be forgiven. And I'm not here to be exposed," Evelyn retorted. Jennifer then remarked, "Perhaps you two are just now getting noticed." The rest of the night was silent. There was no more yelling or accusations, only a heavy, lingering energy that permeated every part of the villa. They weren't friends or enemies, but they were something else now, something complicated and real, and nobody could predict whether they would ever return. The following morning, the villa was somewhat quiet. That felt heavy, like the calm after a long storm. The sun came in through the sheer curtains, casting golden light over half-eaten fruit trays and still glasses. No one hurried to breakfast, and no one filled the air with the usual forced laughs or chirpy good mornings. The energy had completely changed, and whatever veil had previously surrounded their friendships was gone. Now, Brandi sat by the pool, her notebook in hand, headphones draped around her neck, her expression calm but unreadable. She hadn't spoken much since the fire pit, but she didn't need to. She had said what needed to be said, not with anger, but with truth. And sometimes truth doesn't echo. It settles people's chest long after the words are spoken. "That girl hit a nerve last night," Jackie said as she finally broke the coffee that Jennifer had been making in quiet. Jennifer gently nodded, saying, "She's not incorrect. She just mustered the bravery to say it aloud." Or maybe we're just tired of pretending, Jackie replied, stirring her coffee. Jennifer gazed at her for a considerable amount of time. Acting as though we are sisters? In the meantime, Evelyn hadn't left her room since the morning, with her phone off and her blinds closed. Some thought she was regrouping, while others thought she was embarrassed. But one thing was certain, she was shaken. The accusations weren't vague. They were direct, shared by others, and they had receipts behind them. Later that afternoon, the production called a group check-in, which was just a light wellness circle. They said nothing too heavy, but everyone knew it was a setup. The cast assembled in the lounge, sitting in a loose semicircle. When it was Bry's turn, she spoke without flinching, saying, "I've been labeled a lot of things bitter, angry, negative. But what I've never been is fake. And maybe that's what people bother most because I don't know how to smile through it." The therapist was brought in for optics, and soft music played in the background, but the tension was still thick. Jennifer was the first to speak, admitting that she had been feeling emotionally pulled in all directions and that she loved everyone in the group in different ways, but had started to doubt how safe those relationships really were. She looked across the room, not directly at Evelyn, but close. "I didn't come back here to be messy. I came back to be honest, and if that shakes things up, then maybe they needed to be shaken." Eventually, all eyes turned to Evelyn, who appeared worn out but not defeated. Her voice was lower than usual as she said, "I've made mistakes. I've held on to pain in ways that weren't fair to others. But I'm not a villain, I've survived a lot." She glanced at her hands, but if anyone thinks for a brief moment, the room felt as though there might be room for something new to grow. But healing doesn't happen overnight, and not everyone was prepared to move on. After the session, cameras followed Brandi as she walked through the vineyard behind the villa, talking quietly with Jennifer. "I want peace," she said, "but not fake peace. I want to be able to show up without second-guessing every word that comes out of my mouth." Jennifer nodded, agreeing. This was the first time she had not pushed back. They sat on a bench beneath a tree, the wind rustling the leaves above Jennifer, who hesitated before continuing. "I think the audience sees it now. The shift people used to pick sides, now they're asking deeper questions." Brandi smiled slightly, adding that truth has a funny way of making people uncomfortable, but also waking them up. Meanwhile, inside the villa, Evelyn was speaking to her daughter on the phone, and the cameras captured her saying, "I don't know if I can keep doing this, not like this." In the final scene of the retreat, as bags were being packed and cars were lining up outside, Jackie pulled Brandi aside and said, "You changed the game, not just for the group, but also for the show." Brandi looked at her, unsure whether it was a compliment or a warning. The image, the pressure, the way every moment feels like it's being judged. Her daughter's voice was soft but firm. Perhaps it's time to stop worrying about the image and just focus on being real. That night, over a quiet dinner, the group shared a meal without a script. No performances, no staged drama, just silence glances, and the occasional half laugh. Smirking, they now have to decide who they are when the cameras stop and Brandi nods, or if they ever knew to begin with. As the cast went back to their normal lives, the effects of that weekend grew, and fans on social media made timelines that pieced together seasons of clips to highlight instances where Evelyn's actions now appeared suspicious in retrospect. Old arguments were re-watched with new eyes, and videos of her confrontation began trending alongside Shakshar brand role. However, just as many people defended Evelyn, claiming that she had always been the group's emotional core and was misunderstood, but never malicious. The debate was intense, but for the first time, while no one knew exactly how the next episodes would unfold, editors didn't need to exaggerate the truth because what happened at the fire pit in the villa and behind those quiet glances had changed the story for good. This wasn't just TV anymore. It was a reckoning, and no one was safe from the mirror Brandi had held up to them all. Therefore, now that the dust has settled, at least for the time being, we're left with a fractured group, a shaken foundation, and a hole. There are many unanswered questions. Has Brandi really revealed a long-standing pattern of control? Or has she just reached her breaking point with someone who has been playing this game longer than anyone else? Is Evelyn misinterpreting this? Or is this the moment when the spotlight finally turned on her in a way that she couldn't have predicted? What about Jennifer and Jackie? Will they remain neutral or will they take sides? And let's not forget the rest of the cast who have been quietly watching for seasons. A lot of people have been wondering if this charity event was the tipping point, or merely the fans are definitely keeping a close eye on the group as they undergo a larger transition. And the enthusiasm has never been so candid, so we'd like to know if you believe Brandi was correct to call Evelyn out. Has Evelyn been? Do you think she's been playing puppet master all along, or is she just another cast member attempting to avoid the spotlight? Do you support Brandi or Evelyn in the comments section below, or are you still unsure? Please remember to like this. To ensure you don't miss what happens next, hit the notification bell and subscribe to the channel. If the seasons have taught us anything, it is that nothing is ever truly buried and that no one is safe. No one is safe.